take them back.
Good luck.
So yeah, it's recording. Good. So I rendered this last night, the first 32 frames at least. So it's fairly okay. We can once we have something rendered, we can view the sequence as we remember from the view sequence setting, and then just find that file. Just search by date, and it should be down here. Now I rendered it in a special way with parsers. I'll just look at that in a second. So my real render is in this folder called Master Beauty. Fantastic name. Yeah, so this is the sequence I got. To get it to render a little faster, I had to turn down some of the qualities for Final Gather. So that's why we have a little flickering here. No, there's no more black spots. Black spots fixed. But that's what I have right now. But what I did was I rendered it in a special way. What I did was, see if I just minimize that. In the lower right corner of the channel box, there's this thing called the render tab. And in here I created a master layer, and in the layer I created something called contribution passes. So if I just turn on wireframe, it's easier to see. So in a contribution pass I have the house, and if I select objects in pass contribution map, you can see that it's all of the geometry that is the house, right? And if I grab the other one I made that's called landscape, it's all of the rest of the scenery, with the exception of the sky. Then in here, when I have these layers selected, I can right click and go add new render pass, and I can select from this huge list of different things. So what I did was I created a couple of these, and if I open my render settings and go to the pass tab, this is only in Mental Ray, you can see I have a set of what's called associated passes. I have something called ambient occlusion. You might remember that is this black and white or grayscale image of how occluded areas of the image are. So very hidden parts will be darker, and very out in the open parts will be white. Then I have a beauty pass. I have something called custom depth remapped. I basically took all of the depth channels because I wanted them. I have something called matte and something called matte 1. And down here at the bottom I have my pass contribution map. So if I select house, you can see that I associated the one called matte with house, and I associated matte 1 with the one called landscape, and I also associated the one called custom depth. The result of that is this. Let's just open up the folder. This is something that we will look at in the future as well, because it's a way that we can make our rendering more efficient. So you can see it creates a folder for each of these. So for instance, I have the ambient occlusion, and it looks like this, right? So all the out in the open parts of surfaces are white, and all of the sort of hidden gets gradually darker. So this is really good for creating the dark, shadowy. Some people also call it a dirt map, because it's the dark areas are all the areas where dirt would tend to sit because it wouldn't get worn off. So I have that pass. I have my I have a standard beauty pass that looks like this. You can see, because the beauty pass was or because the clouds were not associated with the layer, I don't have the clouds in this thing. The clouds are in the master beauty because it's just everything. Okay. Then I also had one called custom depth, which I think is broken. Then I have one called depth, which is also broken. No, it might be that It's because of the program I'm trying to open it. I'll just open with a different program. Let's see if we just get F-check to handle this. F-check is Wire's own image viewer. Here we go. And go yes. So you can see it can read it. This is a depth map is an image that where the distance from the camera or from the lens is coded into grayscale value. So you can see the farther away the scene is, the darker it gets. The closer it is, the wider it gets. So we can use this later on, for instance in Photoshop or in a compositing package, to control some sort of effect based on the distance, because we now have something that tells us how far away things are. So one of the common things to use this for is like adding fog, so that we can make objects that are further away more occluded, simply by blending maybe a gray color on top of it, based on how dark this is. Another very popular thing is to create what's this called? Depth of field. Depth of field is the effect of things out of focus getting blurred. So you know, if you take a photo with a camera, only the thing that you focus on will be sharp, and the rest will be out of focus. In a computer rendering, that is typically not a problem, because it's a mathematically created lens which is infinitely small, so everything will be sharp, unless you decide to render with depth of field. And depth of field gives a lot more believability in an image, but it also takes a lot more time to render. So because of that, people, at least in the past, like to do depth of field based on depth maps. So that's what we have this for. There's also one called remapped. Oh, okay. There we go. And you can see it looks more or less the same. It might have been fixed a little bit. Then we have the mats. And these are actually quite interesting. So this is the mat for the house. So you can see this is a black and white image that simply shows where the house is, and that's all it does. And the other one I have is the one called mat 1, and that shows where the landscape is. So you can see it's just the opposite. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So you can use these as masks, and the good thing about these masks is that when we have the image, we might decide that we think the foreground or the plants are a little too bright, or maybe we want the house a little darker, or maybe change the color a little bit of the house or something like that. And we can use the mask to control that effect later in Photoshop or compositing. So what I will do is I will start this program called Composite. Well, it's really called Toxik, but somebody decided to call it Composite. And this is essentially it's an animated node-based version of Photoshop, if you like. It looks like this. I've shown you this before, but the way it works is this. Oh. I'll just grab this one, maximize. I need to bring in my footage, so I go to File, Import, and yeah, and I'll find my files on here. It automatically finds my my profile and opens it, and I'll go into the default. That's where it's located, images, and then I'll grab the master beauty because that's the first one, and I'll go import, and then it immediately asks me to create a file, so I'll call this haunted house. Good. So you can see what it does is it loads the file. This file has a transparent background, So you can see it's just like Photoshop. It shows us with these checkerboards, and it has an output node that is made to fit with the input node. So right now we have a sequence of 32 images. So it should actually run if I just press play. There you go. So this is what it looks like. The quality could be better because I had to turn down the sampling level to make sure it rendered, and then of course it didn't. So this is what my rendering looks like. For instance, I think that maybe the house is slightly bright compared to what I like. And I'd also like to add a little bit of glow and maybe make the background a little more, or the clouds give them a little more contrast. So I'll go and import some more. Import. And I'll go to the AO section and import that. You can see it appears over here. And I'll go to the depth remapped. It doesn't really matter. Grab that, import. What? It doesn't like that. Why doesn't it not? Okay, it doesn't want the depth map. Strange. Let's just see. No. Then I'll grab the mat and the other mat, and I'll just leave it at that for now. So you can see I have these pieces here. So basically this one contains all the color information. This gives me extra shadows, and these I'm going to use to mask out other parts of the scene. By the way, I'm running this in non-default mode. So what I've done here is in the preferences, system preferences, not that one, user preferences. I've set the creative to 2D flow top down. Normally it's left to right, but I like the thing that it's going down from the top, ending at the bottom. I think it's because there once was a program called Shake, and it worked in this way. So of course, it's something that I know and I stay with. So first of all, I want to separate out these layers here, and I can do that in a couple of different ways. I can use a compositing node, like a math up. So if I grab this, I can put the house in the front, and then I can use this and put it in there. So you can see right now they're just on top, and then I can use like a multiply. So that way I pick out the house, but unfortunately everything goes black around it, and that's not really what I want. So I'll grab something else. Then there's a different type called a comp up, and if I grab this and put that there, and then grab this and put there, then I can use something A over B, blah blah blah, and A in B. So it looks like this. And the reason why it doesn't cut this out is because unfortunately when I render this, it doesn't have any alpha channel or any transparency, and that's what the comp up is looking for. So I need to change this to be transparent, and I can do that with a channel control called rewire. So I just put it in there. You can see I highlight the connection, and then I just say the alpha should be, for instance, the luminance. So you can see now, instead of being white and black, it's actually it has an alpha, and in the comp map I now use that to cut out the house. So that's the first bit here. I'll just rewire that up to my output, and then I'll do the same thing for the other side. So what I do is I just grab these two, Control C, Control V, over there, plug in the house, and then instead of the house I'm plugging in the landscape over here. So you can see now I get the landscape. And then I can use another type of composition tool, the one called Blend and Comp, and I'll put that in here, and I want the house as a landscape and the the house as the background and the landscape as the foreground. It's not too important what order I use here, because of course they are cut out. So you can see I combine them like this. So now they are independent. So this part over here is the background, or is the landscape, and this part over here, whoops, that needs to go there, and this part over here is the house, and that gets combined here. So we can do it like that. There's a few things here that I need to fix, but don't mind. Then what I can do is I can add something called a color correction, like CC Basics, and put that one of them on each of these, like so. So that means now that I can change the color here. So I can, for instance, change the gamma correction. But it's easier to see if I just watch the final result, and I can do that by right-clicking in this view and go Display, Composition Output, or I can press 7 as the hotkey. So I get this, and then I can go to the CC Basics here, and I can gamma correct my house down so it gets darker like that. And over here I might add a little more saturation to my foreground, and maybe make it slightly darker as well. Okay. I also need to put this in front of the clouds, so I'll add another blend and comp. Put that here. Have the haunted house be the background, have the new thing here at the foreground, and then put the output in the output. There you go. So you can see I go from, just press 6, I go from this to this, simply with 2 color correction nodes. Then another thing I'll do is I'll add a little bit of glow to this. So what I can do here is find glow, that's in the effects section, plug it in here. There you go. And I can just set the output to glow only, so I can see what is going on here. And then if I change the threshold here, you can see I can change what is getting glowed. Just put it like, actually I want this to be, so turn this down. This is good. This is sort of good. Then I turn it to composite, and then I can turn up the radius, so you can see I'll make the glow larger. I just give it some gain here, and you can see it's going. Okay, so I can control how powerful I want it to be. So I don't want it this powerful. I actually just want it to just glow over the edge of the house, and the result is this. So these things are fairly easy to add. Then I want to edit the brightness of the clouds. So I go and add another color correction, CC Basics, on the house here. And if I just press 7 over here, I'll see the final result, and I can then gamma correct down the clouds so they get more. So I think this is more the right feel. It might be a little dark on your end. Yeah, pretty good.
So you can play that?
I can play that, yeah. So it's just generating it on the first run. I can see I have a small issue with something here. It's probably a cloud doing something weird. Just need to check that out. So, what's going on there? It's not the cloud, it's not that. Okay. This is because it's actually transparent. I need to add a background behind this thing. So I'll just add another blend and comp. Put it here. Actually, this should be the foreground. Okay. And then I need to add something that makes my background. And I'll go to the image generation and do a linear ramp. Put that there. Plug that into the background. There. And the linear ramp should be vertical, and I want the color to be like darkish blue.
Oh, so it's like a gradient.
It's exactly like a gradient. Something along those lines. And you can see I get this. It might be, it's actually too blue. Should probably dial it down a bit more. So it's, maybe make it a little greener, like so. There we go. That looks better. So that's actually the result of this. So I get this, and now maybe the foreground here is too bright, so I can go and grab that and just go 7 here, and then I can darken that, of course, bring it down a little bit. But actually, one thing I haven't done is I haven't used this ambient occlusion layer, so maybe I should just use that. I can either put it on everything at the end, or I can put it on each piece by itself up here. So actually that's what I'm going to do. In here, just before I do the CC basics, I'm going to add a comp called a method, put it in here, and then I'm going to plug that in there. So that looks like this, and then I'm going to set this to multiply. So you should be able to see when I drag this how this affects the house. You can see when it's at 100 I get more dark areas, and when I'm at 0 I get not a lot of dark areas. So that can control that, and then I'll just copy that, Control C, Control V, and then put that in here. I can hold the Alt key, and then just you can see it'll snap in here.
Oh.
And then I'll plug that in there, and I get the same thing here. You can see the difference probably a little better here. You can see how bright it is, and then make it dark. Oh, you can't. It's quite visible here. So you can now I have something that has a little more depth to it, simply because there's more darkness in there. So home key. So that is the result for now. And then maybe one thing I should add here is some blurring of these foreground elements. I could do that. So if I go to just after these CC basics here and add a blur node, filter, blur, put it in there. Okay. And then I can just blur this. So you see, that puts the foreground slightly out of focus, not a lot. And you see if I do too much, it doesn't look quite right.
So that you can't see anything but the windows and the sky.
I will turn up the brightness then. CC basics. There we go. Is it better?
Yes.
There we go.
Oh, I see.
So you can see that by having this blur node in here, I can control the blurring. Now the lucky thing is that because of the way the mask is, it will actually blur this area and not the final bit there, which actually looks a little nice. But then again, it's not quite what I wanted. So I can actually feed this another ramp. So if I duplicate this ramp, actually Control C and Control V, and then in this blur I have this thing called a modulation image. So if I plug it in there and I make this ramp something going from white to black, and it should actually be, should be quite good here. So I can push down the center like so, and then the blur here should be affected by that, so I just turn that to 0 and go to modulation. Actually set this to 7, yeah. And then I use the modulation blur, and hopefully you can see that it blurs more down here than up at the other end. So if I push this center up, can you see it blurs more at the top?
Yeah.
And then as I pull it down, it blurs more in the foreground. So just look at the ramp here and say, okay, it looks like that.
Something wrong with the settings.
Blur that, and then get something like this. Just turn down the blur slightly. So I end up with something like this, and it's actually zoomed. So I just press the home button. There we go. And then let's see how that works. So it works slightly better because I have a little bit of a blur in the foreground. So that's the result of rendering it out. Of course, to make this an image, I have to go to render, set the file format. It would probably be a MO file. MO. And then I can choose where it should render, and I go File, Render, and it creates a video file for this. I would probably just turn this off in the beginning to make it nice and dark. And then just go render.
You can also pre-compose. Fantastic.
I can do a lot of weird things here. In here, pre-compositions is actually rendering out a sequence and then use that so that it doesn't have to render it live.
Yeah.
So if I do this, it will create a haunted house movie file. There you go. So that was all there was to it. Okay.